There's a certain kind of actor Hollywood doesn't produce very often anymore. Not the kind chasing scandal or courting tabloids, but the kind who simply shows up, does the work, and earns people's trust one role at a time. Robert Urich was that actor. For 30 years, he was a fixture in American living rooms, a leading man in 15 different television series, a face so familiar that audiences felt like they knew him personally. But the story of his life, and the story of the woman who stood beside him through all of it, is far more complicated and far more moving than any of the characters he played. This is the story of Robert Urich and Heather Menzies, two performers whose partnership survived Hollywood, survived cancer once, and then, in the cruelest twist imaginable, could not survive a second time, 15 years apart. Robert Michael Urich was born on December 19, 1946, in Toronto, Ohio, a small steel town along the Ohio River. He was not born in Toronto, Canada, as many casual fans have assumed over the years, an error that stuck around for decades simply because of his shared name. His parents, John Paul and Cecilia Urich, raised him in a home shaped by Rusyn and Slovak heritage and the traditions of the Byzantine Catholic Church. He grew up the kind of kid teachers and coaches liked immediately, athletic, well-spoken, dependable. That athleticism carried him to Florida State University on a football scholarship, where he played backup center and, notably, crossed paths with another young man who would go on to become one of the biggest stars in the world, Burt Reynolds. At the time, neither of them could have guessed how intertwined their futures would become. Urich wasn't dreaming of Hollywood yet. He was focused on academics, eventually earning a degree in radio and television communications, and later a master's degree in broadcast research and management from Michigan State University. For a while, it looked like Urich was headed toward a conventional career behind a desk or a microphone rather than in front of camera. He took voice lessons in Chicago, worked in television sales for WGN, and even tried his hand as a weatherman. None of it fit. He was let go from his sales job after his employer discovered he had been quietly moonlighting, sneaking off to audition for acting roles on the side. It was an inauspicious beginning for a man who would eventually become one of the most reliable leading men on American television, but it revealed something important about him early on. He already knew, before anyone else did, exactly where he wanted his life to go. The turning point came when Urich appeared alongside his old college friend Burt Reynolds in a Chicago stage production of The Rainmaker. Reynolds, by then already climbing toward major stardom, saw something in his friend's performance and told him plainly that he had what it took. He encouraged Urich to move to Los Angeles and actually try. Urich took the advice. In 1972, he landed a guest spot on the FBI, a small foothold that opened the door to bigger things. A year later came his first starring role in a short-lived television adaptation of Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, which was canceled after just 6 episodes. But that same year, 1973, Urich made his film debut in a much bigger production, Magnum Force, the gritty sequel to Dirty Harry, starring opposite Clint Eastwood. Playing a rogue motorcycle cop with a vigilante streak, Urich proved he could hold his own in serious, high-stakes drama, not just genial television roles. 2 years later, Reynolds again played a quiet role in his friend's career, encouraging producer Aaron Spelling to give Urich a look for a new action series. Spelling was won over almost immediately and cast him as Officer Jim Street in SWAT. The show became a sensation, though its violence drew heavy criticism, and it was canceled within a year. Urich, however, had already proven he had the presence audiences responded to, and offers kept coming. A comedic turn on Soap, a starring role on the bewitched spin-off Tabitha, guest work scattered across the television landscape of the mid-1970s. In 1978, Urich landed the role that would define an era of his career. Cast as private investigator Dan Tana in Vega Dollar, he embodied a stylish, street-smart detective working the neon-lit backdrop of Las Vegas. Urich took the physical transformation seriously, adding roughly 40 pounds of muscle to fill out the part convincingly on screen. Audiences loved it. The show earned him 2 Golden Globe nominations and made him one of the most recognizable leading men on network television. It ran on ABC until 1981, when declining ratings finally brought it to a close. Rather than slow down, Urich kept working across both film and television through the 1980s. He starred in the science fiction thriller Endangered Species, the oceanography drama Gavilan, the offbeat comedy The Ice Pirates, Wes Craven's horror film Invitation to Hell, and the drama Turk 182 alongside Timothy Hutton. None of these matched the commercial heights of Vegadollar, but they showed an actor willing to stretch beyond a single type of role. Then, in 1985, came Spencer, For Hire, based on Robert B. Parker's novels. Urich played the tough but principled Boston private investigator for 3 seasons, and the role became so associated with him that he returned to the character in a string of television movies well into the 1990s, including Ceremony, Pale Kings and Princes, The Judas Goat, and A Savage Place. Around the same time, he took on hosting duties for National Geographic Explorer, revealing a more thoughtful, curious side of his public persona and earning a Cable ACE award for his work. His range and credibility as a performer reached a new peak in 1989 with the acclaimed miniseries Lonesome Dove, in which he played Jake Spoon, a former Texas Ranger with a tragic fate. Critics singled out his performance for its depth, a rare moment of serious acclaim for an actor often associated with lighter, more commercial fare. In 1992, his narration work on the documentary U-Boats, Terror on Our Shores, earned him an Emmy Award. Long before any of that late career acclaim, Urich's personal life had already taken a defining turn. His first marriage, to actress Barbara Rucker in 1968, ended in divorce in 1974. It was around that same time that he met the woman who would become his partner for the rest of his life, Heather Menzies. Menzies was already a recognizable face in her own right. Born in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, on December 3rd, 1949, to Scottish immigrant parents, she had lived a peripatetic childhood, moving through Vancouver, Miami, London, and Southern California before her family settled long enough for her to attend high school in Burbank. Her break came astonishingly early. At just 14 years old, with no formal acting training, she was cast as Louisa Von Trapp in the 1965 film The Sound of Music, one of the most beloved movie musicals ever made. She held her own among a highly experienced cast, and to this day, fans still recognize her from that single role more than from anything else she did afterward. Menzies built a steady career through the late 1960s and 1970s, appearing in television series including Bonanza, Dragnet, The Bob Newhart Show, Marcus Welby, MD, and later Vegadollar, alongside her future husband. She also took on a lead role in the cult science fiction series Logan's Run, and appeared in films such as Piranha and Endangered Species. Robert Urich and Heather Menzies met while filming a television commercial together, a light-hearted spot in which their characters pretended to get married. Life, as it sometimes does, imitated art. The two became a real couple, and in 1975, they married for real. What began as a piece of advertising fiction turned into one of the more stable, enduring marriages in an industry not always known for either quality. Together, they adopted 3 children: Ryan, born in 1978, Emily, born in 1980, and nearly 2 decades later, in 1998, a daughter named Allison. By the mid-1990s, Urich's career had entered a quieter but still active phase. He starred in a string of shows that came and went, including American Dreamer, Crossroads, and the short-lived sitcom It Had to Be You with Faye Dunaway. In 1996, he found a promising new vehicle in the TNT Western series The Lazarus Man, which performed well enough to be renewed for a second season. Then, in July of 1996, Urich made an announcement that would define the remaining years of his life. He had been diagnosed with synovial sarcoma, a rare and aggressive cancer that attacks the body's soft tissue and joints. The news devastated his family, but perhaps just as painful was what followed professionally. Rather than working with him to adapt the production schedule, the Lazarus Man's production company, Castle Rock Entertainment, canceled the show almost immediately after learning of his diagnosis. Urich felt he had been discarded before anyone had even asked whether he could still do the job. He eventually filed a breach of contract lawsuit against the studio, seeking compensation tied to the second season he never got to film. The suit was resolved privately, but the episode left a lasting impression of an industry that could be as unsentimental as it was glamorous. What Urich did next revealed the core of his character. Rather than retreating from public life, he leaned into it, becoming one of the more visible cancer advocates in Hollywood. He underwent chemotherapy, radiation, and multiple surgeries, and continued working throughout his treatment, hosting the National Geographic series On Assignment, even while undergoing chemotherapy. He and Heather together established the Robert and Heather Urich Fund for Sarcoma Research at the University of Michigan Comprehensive Cancer Center, channeling both attention and money toward a disease that received relatively little public awareness. Urich also received the Gilda Radner Courage Award and an honor from the John Wayne Cancer Institute in recognition of his advocacy. After winning $125,000 on a celebrity edition of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, he donated the money directly to cancer research. By 1998, Urich was declared cancer-free. He returned almost immediately to steady work, starring as Captain Jim Kennedy III in Love Boat, The Next Wave, and later making his Broadway debut as the fast-talking lawyer Billy Flynn in Chicago, touring with the production into the new millennium. In 2001, he joined the short-lived NBC sitcom Emeril, built around celebrity chef Emeril Lagasse. It would turn out to be his final television series. The remission did not hold. In the autumn of 2001, doctors discovered new tumors, and Urich's cancer had returned. Even then, by all accounts, he remained determined and hopeful, continuing to explore treatment options and holding on to the same resilience that had carried him through his first diagnosis 5 years earlier. But this time, the disease progressed more aggressively. In April 2002, just a week before his death, Urich was admitted to Los Robles Hospital and Medical Center in Thousand Oaks, California, with breathing complications. On April 16, 2002, he died there at the age of 55, with Heather and their 3 children by his side. His last screen appearance, a television movie called Night of the Wolf, aired on Animal Planet the night before he passed, an almost eerie piece of timing that meant audiences were watching him on screen at the very moment his family was saying goodbye. A funeral mass was held 3 days later, on April 19th, at St. Charles Borromeo Church in North Hollywood. He was cremated, and his ashes were interred at the family's vacation property in Prince Edward County, Ontario, Canada, near a small memorial that now stands in the West Lake Church of Christ Cemetery. In his hometown of Toronto, Ohio, a highway interchange was later named in his honor, and he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 7083 Hollywood Boulevard, where for years he was the only person with a surname beginning in until Usher joined him decades later. What often gets lost in the